to have Joe Castiglione with us. I'm sure all of you know Joe, but just for a little bit of background, he is entering his 39th year as the radio voice of the Boston Red Sox, which is a record. Ned Martin, 32 years. He passed Ned quite a few years back, and he is now #1. He has also been a major league broadcaster overall for 42 years. He had 3 years on TV, 2 with the Indians and 1 with the Brewers. Looks like he just missed the Brewers pennant year. He was there in '81, and then he went back to the Indians, so that was bad timing. But he did see Raleigh Fingers, I guess, win a Cy Young and MVP. But he's been with the Red Sox since '83. And of course, he's seen some great teams since then. As Bill mentioned, he's written 2 books. He's also been a professor at Northeastern, Emerson, and Franklin Pierce for many years. And also for 30 years, he has been a major force with the Jimmy Fund and Dana Farber. He is 9 years ahead of me in that capacity. So I've got some catching up to do. And of course, a member of the Red Sox Hall of Fame, and hopefully will someday be a member of the Cooperstown Hall of Fame as well, which would be well deserving. So Joe, I guess we got some sad news right before the meeting about Billy Conigliaro passing away. I don't know if you had any reflections to share on Billy before we get to other questions.
Well, very sad news indeed. Billy, of course, is very instrumental every year in the awarding of the Tony Conigliaro Award. It was always at the banquet to help present that award to the comeback player of the year, best exemplified Tony's courage. And the family had so much sadness, and it's really tough to lose Billy. I just heard from a couple of his former Brewer teammates, Ken Sanders, a pitcher, and Phil Roof, a catcher, who were very saddened and shocked by this. We don't really know the details, but certainly tough to lose another Conigliaro. I remember one of my first games with the Red Sox happened to be Tony Conigliaro night when he had had the heart attack, and there was a performance for him at Symphony Hall, and that was the night of the Coup LaRue, where Buddy LaRue staged the attempt to take over management of the club. And of course, that was really strange because I think I had done about 15 games at that point as a Red Sox broadcaster. Wow. And that was pretty shocking. But eventually it all worked out well. And of course, we've had outstanding ownership since.
Yeah, and I guess the latest winner of the Tony C. Award, Daniel Bard, who former Red Sox, who made a great comeback last year with Colorado. So it's really, there've been some incredible winners through the years. And I believe SABR did a book on all the winners that Bill might even have edited. So
co-editor, yeah, overcoming adversity.
Yeah, it's really, and it was great that Billy was able to get the Red Sox. I think he was the #1 shepherder, not only for the award, but also to get that nice display at Fenway in under the bleachers on Tony's career, although some people probably think it deserved number retirement, but at least we have that and people can learn about the courage of Tony C.
Yeah, the last 2 winners of the Tony C. Award with local ties, Rich Hill, of course, from Milton, Mass. And I just got a text from Rich yesterday. He did not mention where he's going. I know he has several offers. I'd love to see him come back to the Red Sox. And of course, this year, Daniel Bard, as you mentioned, who has local connections, his grandfather, Fran O'Brien, the athletic director at MIT, former Holy Cross baseball coach. His dad played at Tufts, and Jim Palmer told me what a great catcher he was in the minor leagues, where he caught Palmer. He didn't make it to the big leagues, and of course, his brother Luke was with the Angels. So a great story. I mean, 7 years in between big league appearances, and
incredible
all types of mental issues in terms of his baseball performance and physical issues. And he was a counselor, a mental coach, and then all of a sudden back throwing 95 and winning the Tony C. Award.
Yeah, incredible. I think he was unscored upon in his first like 20 appearances or something. It was absolutely incredible.
And really a great young man. He was really a solid guy, and very happy for him.
So let's get on to another great Red Sox legend that, of course, just announced his retirement. That's Dustin Pedroia. I'm wondering if you saw of course you saw all of Dustin's career, if you have any reflections to share on this great player.
Well, he's really one of a kind. I mean, he's so feisty, and just don't tell him he can't do something, because he'll prove you wrong. He had that attitude, and it really worked. And of course, he had the great hand-eye coordination, great bat speed. He's the best defensive second baseman I've ever seen. I mean, the way he could dive for balls, either to his left or to his right, and get up so quickly and still make the throw to get the runner at first was absolutely amazing. And of course, a clutch performer who can forget as a rookie. I mean, the big game against Cleveland, 07, game 7, he had that big bases loaded double, drove in, I believe, 5 runs. And of course, that led off the World Series with a home run, which led to one of my favorite stories. At bottom of the first inning at Fenway, hits the first pitch of Jeff Francis into the left field monster seats. We get to Colorado for game 3. I'm sure many of you heard this story. The security guard won't let him in the players' gate. And he didn't have ID, but Pedroia, in his own inimitable way, said, "Go ask Jeff blankety blank Francis who I am. He'll tell you."
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I believe Joe Morgan, who saw a few second basemen in his day, he made a pretty good comparison of Pedroia, right? You told us.
He did, yes. I was talking to Joe just 2 days ago, and Joe loved Pedroia. I think it's his favorite player since he managed the Red Sox. I mean, he called me twice a week. Did you see Pedroia make this play or that play? What's the best play you've ever seen him make? Look at those hits he has, all the doubles off the wall. And, Joe saw Bobby Doerr play. I did not. But Joe thinks that Pedroia was a better player than Bobby Doerr, and thus would be a Hall of Fame candidate. My initial thought was maybe he needed another year or two to get the numbers up. But I looked at some of the numbers, and they're pretty comparable. 14 years for both, although Doerr played about 300 more games. Doerr had just over 2,000 hits. Petey had over 1,800 hits. Pedroia had more doubles. Doerr had more homers, 223 to 140. Pedroia hit for a higher average at 299, 288 for Doerr. And in terms of defense, errors, of course, are not the great indicator for a middle infielder, but Doerr made 214 errors, and Petey made only 57 errors his whole career. He won 4 Gold Gloves. But to me, it wasn't the few errors that he made. It was the great plays he made, the way he could turn the double play, and especially the way he could cut off so many hits. I know there was a story in the Globe yesterday that his WAR may not be as high as some of the others, but I think you really have to look at the intangibles. And a lot of times defense is overlooked. Morgan also saw and was a coach when Bill Mazeroski played, and he said that Pedroia was better defensively than Mazeroski, certainly a better hitter. And I think a strong case can be made. Joe always said the best second baseman he ever saw defensively was Robbie Alomar. And, he changed that to Pedroia after watching him for so many years. Alomar certainly was great. And both had the ability to make plays that other people wouldn't dare to make. They didn't have the guts or the self-confidence to make some of the plays, like throwing out a runner at third from their second base position on a ground ball to the right side. But I think a strong case can be made for Pedroia. I would hope he comes back. I think he'd be a good manager. Another one of my favorite stories, you remember when he came up, he was hitting, he finished that 06 season hitting under 200 and started the same way in 07, his rookie of the year. And then he took off at the end of April. And one reporter went up to him and said, "What got you going?" He said, "Well, a lot of people said I couldn't play. I couldn't hit. And I'm proving them wrong." And the reporter said, "Who would that be?" And Pedroia looked that reporter right in the eye and said, "Well, you, for instance."
Wow. That would stop an interview pretty quick.
That was Petey. I'll never forget one time we were sitting in the Red Sox dugout during batting practice at Globe Light, the original Globe Light in Arlington, Texas, really hot night. the Rangers were taking batting practice, and Ian Kinsler was in the cage. And Pedroia said to me, "You see that guy up there?" He said, "He didn't like me very much. He was the shortstop at Arizona State, and I came on and I took his job, so he transferred to Missouri."
I guess he never forgot a snub or never forgot a competitor.
Yeah. You know, coincidentally, when Petey got hurt in 18, he went to Kinsler, who was not the same player we used to be, for the postseason run. So when Iran came around in that case.
Wow. Yeah, no, he was one of a kind. There's one play I remember, I think it like went off of Uke's glove or somebody's glove, and he like instinctively still went to the ball, got it, and threw to the pitcher covering it. I mean, just like, yeah, that next step, almost like Jeter. I'm thinking of those plays Jeter made like around home plate.
A 3 to 4 to 1 play. He was so heady. I mean, he knew, I think he anticipated what would happen and he was ready for it. He just, and again, he is fearless in terms of making plays others would not attempt to make for fear of failing.
Right. Well, we could talk about them all night, but we have obviously other topics to get to. So one thing this I'm sure last year was unlike any of your previous years in baseball, of course, because of the pandemic. What was it like to do play-by-play in a pandemic?
Well, it was certainly different. And I think the biggest adjustment was no social contact. We saw the games live, broadcast the games live at Fenway. On the road, we were at Fenway when the team was on the road. We worked off a monitor. But, you know, in baseball, you get to the ballpark 3-4 hours before the game, and that's the time to get stories, to relate, socialize with players and coaches and managers. None of that existed. We were not allowed on the field. We were not allowed in the clubhouse, certainly. And no one was allowed to our broadcast level on the 5th floor where the writers also work because of the strict protocols, which of course made sense. So there was no social aspect and that really took something away, I think. Took away the ability to report, to get stories, but it also took a lot of the fun out of it because you just didn't have the opportunities to get to know players or to continue relationships. We did talk to the manager every day, either on Zoom or by cell phone to do his show. And occasionally a player would do a Zoom, but that was pretty limited. So certainly we missed that. The road games are very, very different because there were 8 people in Fenway Park, we counted when we did the games when the team was on the road. 4 of us in our booth, myself, Will Fleming, our intern, and our engineer, Doug Lane, 2 Spanish broadcasters, and 2 security guards. That was it. I could literally park directly across or right by Gate D on Jersey Street, walk through Gate D about 10 feet, get my temperature taken from one of the security people that was there, and go up to the 5th floor and do the game. I had my own booth in deference to the seniors and those most, I guess, vulnerable to COVID. I had my own booth, and Will worked with the engineer right in the Red Sox radio booth. I was in the visiting TV booth. Had a huge monitor set up, one big screen, and several little screens. One showed a wide shot of the field, another showed the bullpens, and another some tight shots. And it was okay. I mean, some people couldn't tell. We had the piped-in crowd noise. Some people couldn't tell that we weren't at the facility. The most difficult part of it was on boundary calls, fair or foul, especially on home runs, because we were at the mercy of the TV director. We had to go by the shots that we were given. Sometimes it was a little bit late, but the toughest call was a home run because they circled it, they zoom in on the foul pole and show a tight shot, and it was hard to tell whether the ball was fair or foul until they pulled back and you saw either the guy that hit the ball running the bases, jogging around the bases on a home run trot, or back in the batter's box ready for another pitch where to foul ball. So those kind of things we had to overcome, but it really wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. You certainly needed total concentration, and again, at the mercy of the TV director. And certainly the home games course, we were there live, but as far as the visiting games go, I think most of the directors did a very good job and made it easier for us. Now, Nesson, Dave O'Brien, Jerry Remy, and Dennis Eckersley never left the Nesson studios. They didn't even do the home games from the ballpark. At least we had the opportunity to do that.
So they were in Watertown the whole time.
Right. Now,
wow.
What it'll be like this year, we don't know. I mean, I'm waiting for a spring training schedule. We just don't know. It could change. I mean, there's talk about going to pods, west coast of Florida, east coast of Florida, maybe even southwest Florida, and then the Tampa area. I would think it would make sense if we were in a pod with the Twins, with whom we share Fort Myers, the Rays, who are about an hour away, and the Braves, who are now outside of Venice, a little over an hour away. But that remains to be seen. Everything's last minute right now.
You're already down there.
Yeah.
What's the feeling like, around the ballpark, as we're going to try to have a full season?
Well, there are players at the ballpark. I haven't been there yet. I'm not so sure I can get in right now. I'm going to try it maybe tomorrow. But I know Chris Sale's been working out there. I played golf with a minor leaguer, Thad Ward, who's from Bishop Verot. He and Jackie Bradley played with me Saturday, and he's over there working out. Of course, Jackie's a free agent now.
Let's cross our fingers on Jackie.
Facility. Yeah, I said to him, Jackie, I know your agent likes to wait rather late to make a decision, and that's Scott Porras. He said, no, it's not the agent. He's waiting for offers. He's waiting for more offers or better offers. So he didn't tip his hand where he's going, but I'm really hopeful we have him. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I love hearing you talk about him on the radio because I can just hear your enthusiasm. And I'm sure even in this set of squares, there's split views on it, but I'm with you. I mean, just like with Mookie, you never knew what great play you were going to see Jackie make, whether or not the numbers say he's the Gold Glover or the best defensive guy or not. He's the best guy I've ever seen.
I think he is the best outfielder I've ever seen. Now, I saw Dwight Evans, who was great. I did see, of course, Mookie, who was outstanding. I saw some of Clemente in his later years. Willie Mays a little bit on TV, not too much in person. But Jackie makes plays that very, very few make. It's the tremendous jump he has and the routes he takes are so good. Yeah. And that's why I'm not a fan of defensive metrics. Jackie's penalized by Fenway Park because it's smaller. If he played in Colorado, he'd be off the charts. He win Gold Gloves every year. He should have many more than one Gold Glove.
I can't believe he has one. Yeah.
And he can throw accurately.
Yeah, Freddie Lynn, another one somebody just mentioned, another great fielder, and he won 3 or 4 Gold Gloves.
He did, and he was great. But from what I've seen, I didn't see Freddie Lynn every day. I wasn't in Boston then, but I'd take Jackie over anybody. When I was inducted in the Red Sox Hall of Fame and had to throw out the first pitch, I asked Jackie to catch the first pitch because Jackie catches everything.
That's a good call. A couple other great players. Unfortunately, we've had a bunch pass away, Hall of Famers in the last several months. Wondering what some of your memories are of Tom Seaver.
It's just been awful. 10 Hall of Famers in the last 9 months, I think it is. So tragic. Henry Aaron, the most recent. But we did have a chance to be with Seaver. Of course, he was a hero. You know, we were in college when Seaver having great years with the Mets and the '69 Mets, the Miracle Mets, and he was a hero to so many of us. And when he did come to the Red Sox, he didn't have a winning record, but he kept the Red Sox in a lot of games. I remember it was a Saturday night, very late. We were in Baltimore, and the Red Sox made a trade in the middle of the night, sending Steve Lyons to the Chicago White Sox for Seaver. And he didn't join us till the next series, but he pitched some very good games for us. And I didn't realize he knew so much about baseball history. In fact, he took me to task one day because I didn't know the record for most shutouts by a major league pitcher. And he couldn't believe I didn't know that. It was Walter Johnson with 110, he quickly pointed out. And I guess the reason that he was so into that stat was because he had 71 major league shutouts, which is tied with Nolan Ryan, his former teammate with the Mets, for 7th. Grover Cleveland Alexander's second with 90. So certainly those records will never be broached again.
No, you've got to be lucky if he has 71 complete games.
That's very unlikely too.
Yeah. Another one we lost, unfortunately, another guy who did the Red Sox in, but I'm sure a lot of Red Sox fans loved, was Bob Gibson. And you have a fun story about Gibson.
Yeah, I didn't really know him personally. My former Red Sox partner, Bob Starr, worked with him with the Cardinals and loved him. Said he was one of the most honest and direct guys you'd ever meet. And of course, we all know what a great competitor he was. But in 1971, I was working in Youngstown, Ohio, and covering games on my nights off from anchoring TV at Three Rivers Stadium, which was brand new. And Bill Guilfoyle, a longtime Pirates public relations director and former National Baseball Hall of Fame PR director, let me use a booth on the 4th level of Three Rivers Stadium to practice play-by-play. And it was a Saturday night, I recall, and the Cardinals scored early and often. This was a World Championship Pittsburgh team, by the way. They won it all that year, beating the Orioles in the World Series. But the Cardinals scored 11 runs quickly and thought the drama was over. But no, Bob Gibson was working on a no-hitter, and I did an audio tape on my own and got the last inning of Bob Gibson's no-hitter, the first in Pittsburgh since 1909. And I used that tape as an audition tape when I got my Cleveland Indians job, my first Major League Baseball job in 1979. So it was a good tape to have. I just happened to be so lucky that that was the night that Gibby pitched the no-hitter.
That's really special. Another pitcher who, of course, you saw many, many, many great games from, who was in the news recently, was Roger Clemens. Once again, not making the Hall of Fame, but I know you're a huge fan of the Rocket.
I would vote for Roger if I had a vote, which of course is a sore subject that broadcasters, like myself, who've seen 6,000 games, do not have a vote for the Hall of Fame. We thought that might change, but apparently there's nothing in the works to change that. But Ernie Harwell never had a vote. Vince Scully never had a vote unless they're on the Veterans Committee later in their careers. But I would vote for Roger. We all know what he did, winning 354 games. And I was with him. I saw every game he ever pitched for the Red Sox, all 192 wins. I mean, I don't know whether he used steroids or not. If he did, it was not during his time with the Red Sox, which I think would have been enough to qualify him as a Hall of Famer. By the same token, I'd also have to say Barry Bonds deserves it as well. Would not vote for McGuire or Sosa. I didn't think they were Hall of Famers before. But, I mean, how do you differentiate when they did it or if they did it? I'm sure there are many in there today who were users. And I think it'll eventually happen, although both Bonds and Clemens have only one more year. And when it goes to the former players, that's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, some of them have some really strong opinions, I know, about the steroid guys.
Yeah, you do. And, it's maybe they have a better chance with the writers today. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're almost at the halfway point. So I just wanted to, before we open it up to everybody, and thank you, Joe, for all the great insights you gave me. I want to mention that you have another Zoom event coming up that anybody can take part in. From February 23rd to 25th, the Babe Ruth Museum will be hosting its annual Babe Birthday Bash. And Joe is going to be leading the program on the 24th, which will also include, I should have worn my glasses, Mark Teixeira, Babe Ruth biographer Jane Levy, great book she wrote. Tom Schieber, former senior, or now the senior curator for the Hall of Fame, and Babe Ruth historian Bill Jenkinson. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody. I think that's everybody.
That was the panel, yes.
Yeah, and
it's a 3-day event that it'll include discussion of the 1970 World Championship Warriors with Jim Palmer and Brooks Robinson.
Right, that's on the 25th.
Right, there are 3 different evenings.
Yep.
It's on Facebook at Babe Ruth Museum.
Right, if you go to baberuthmuseum.org, you can get your link to the event. And I think they have different packages. It's free to listen, but you can also ask questions if you pay like $10 or something like that. So seems like a good deal all around.
It was great. Jane Levy did some marvelous research. I thought the Robert Kramer book was great on Babe, and Lee Montville's The Big Bam was off the charts. But with everything computerized, the records, county records, city records, Jane Levy had research that was not available before, finding out about, especially Babe's youth, which he tried to downplay because, I mean, he had a miserable childhood with his parents sending him off to school and his parents being part of an ultimate dysfunctional family. So she did some great research on that. And if you've never been to the Babe birth house, it's on Emory Street in Baltimore. It's literally 2 blocks from Oriole Park to Camden Yards. It was actually Babe's grandparents' house where he was born on a cold February day in 1895. His mother thought he was born in 1894. So he found out years later he was a year younger than he thought he was. But his mother had many issues.
Yeah, it's a great place. I was there on his 100th birthday. I was there. I'd covered a story for the Washington Post, and that was when it was brand new, and they had to like buy it from the city, and they had to save it from getting destroyed. And actually, I believe Camden Yards is built on what they believe underground, under the field, is where one of the Ruth bars once stood. Or, I don't know if that's
true. The dishes saw when they were excavating from Babe Ruth's dad's bar.
Wow.
He had another one on Lombard Street, maybe 2 blocks away, which is now a gentleman's club of sorts.
Seems somewhat appropriate. All right, so let's send it back over to Bill. We've got some great questions that have been coming in. Oh, there's her Korean right now. So
speaking of the internet,
hey guys.
Bob Lemoyne asked a question. When was the first time you used the internet, Joe, in preparing for a broadcast in the booth? And how was that as an adjustment to the kind of work preparation you might have done pre-internet?
You know, I really can't pick a date. It seems like we've always had it, but I do remember games without it, where you'd wonder about something and have to look it up after the game. And now you have instant answers. That's the biggest adjustment. I would say the mid to late 90s. And it did change things in that you didn't have to wonder about who was the last to do this, or who had the most shutouts, or the most hits in a 9-inning game. I mean, of course, you had record books, but you could look things up instantly, and I think have answers, instant answers. And I think that's the biggest thing. Of course, more and more detailed updates on out-of-town games, but it really did change. The information available was made it just so much easier, and there was so much more of it. And sometimes you have to be a good editor because, of course, you can't believe everything you read, especially when it's not a stat, if it's an opinion. But I think it really has changed the way we broadcast. And I have my phone right by my smartphone where I'm able to look up anything right there. I used to bring a laptop, but now I can do everything on that smartphone. So it really has made it so much, I think, more thorough in terms of being a broadcaster.
The first question that came in was from Mark Sternman. By the way, I did want to mention Skip Lockwood has joined the session here, former Red Sox.
Hey, Skip, from Rye, New Hampshire now. Yeah. He's got a great book, and his wife has a great book.
Yeah. I was so Mark Sternman asked, who was your favorite broadcast partner, if you don't mind saying, and maybe some of the other radio announcers that you most admire.
Well, it's really tough to pick my favorite broadcast partner. That's like picking your favorite child.
Yeah.
But I've had great partners. I mean, Ken Coleman brought me to Boston. I worked with his son in Cleveland, and Ken was very instrumental in me getting the job in 1983. We usually don't have any say in who we work with, But that was a unique situation because the rights had just gone from, I believe, W1510 on the dial to
ITS?
Yeah,
MEX. Yeah.
to Plymouth, and WPLM had never hired an announcer. So Ken had a lot to say and was largely responsible. We had 7 wonderful years together. It was a different relationship. I mean, it was professor-student, and he was wonderful to me. He helped me get established. So did Johnny Pesky, because Johnny was sick that year. Remember, he had that Spruce disease, a reaction to yeast, and he wasn't physically able to coach on the line. So he'd come up to the booth after batting practice and sit in with me in my innings and do color. And, you know, when Johnny's in your corner, he tells the whole world about it. And he really helped me get established and accepted. After that, I had Bob Starr. I had so much fun with the Burley broadcaster, as he called himself. We had 3 wonderful years together. He taught me how to laugh, how to have fun. He had a saying about baseball: "It's not my life and it's not my wife." Well, I never did subscribe to that because, you know, I show pain when the Red Sox struggle. But Bob got a kick out of it. I never forget one game. We were in Comiskey Park, and 2 out in the 9th. The Red Sox had the tying run at third, the going run at second, losing by 1 run to the White Sox. Bobby Thigpen, I think, had his 57 saves that year, is pitching. Jody Reed hit a bullet right to the pitcher, and he stabbed it, end the game. Bob looked over at me, started laughing. He says, "I know it was a tough loss for the Red Sox. It ended so quickly, and if either way, they might have won it. But I'm laughing because I'm looking at my partner who looks like he's just been harpooned." He was totally deflated. So Bob had a lot of fun. Bob, 14 years of Jerry Trupiano, the first contemporary I worked with, and we had a lot in common, good friendship, and we had a lot of fun. Glenn Geffner, in 07, after he had been media relations director, we're still very close. I just talked to Glenn yesterday, who's one of the broadcasters for the Marlins. Dave O'Brien, from 07 up until 3 years ago. And Dave and I had a great friendship. And I thought we really complemented each other well. Tim Never was a lot of fun for the years he worked. We had the World Championship in 18. And Will Fleming, who's with me now, I think is one of the real upcoming stars. I think he's the guy to take over, probably sooner rather than later in the Red Sox broadcast booth. He is just has the cachet, the pedigree. His brother, I believe, 17 years voice of the San Francisco Giants, working with John Miller, and you're going to hear a lot of great things about Will Fleming. And of course, the guys that have filled in. So a lot of fun to work with Sean McDonough these days, the last 2 years, and I think he'll be with us for some games this year. And of course, Lou Merlone, who does a great job. It's always fun to have Lou and get his player viewpoints during the course of a game. And you know, he's one ex-player who's not afraid to step on other players' toes, which is always nice to have because you get an honest answer.
That's quite a roster.
It's really hard to come up with a favorite with all of those. As far as my favorite growing up was Mel Allen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've hidden it too well over the years. I did grow up a Yankee fan, a Mickey Mantle fan, and a Mel Allen fan. And
we forgive you.
How about Ned Martin?
Mickey didn't live up to it, but I met Mel, and he was wonderful. And he just one of the, to me, he was the greatest. He had the ability to make a game. And of course, he had great teams, which made it a little bit easier, but he had to make even rain delays exciting. And he just had that booming voice, that Southern charm, his knowledge of the game, his love of the game. And he was really a great guy too. I heard a great story about Mel from Joe Garagiola. When Mel got fired for still unknown reasons by the Yankees in 1964 after 20 some years, he was only 51 years old. Joe Garagiola wound up getting the job. And the first call he got when he was named Yankee broadcaster was from Mel Allen, who said, "Joe, congratulations. You have the greatest job in the world. Good luck with it." Wow. That's the kind of guy Mel was. And of course, later, a great career at This Week in Baseball.
Yeah.
And the Yankees did bring him back in, I think it was 1982, 83, because when he was Yankee broadcaster, he got a call from an assistant football coach at Northwestern who wanted some information on how you could become a broadcaster. And he gave the guy an hour on the phone. The coach's name was George Steinbrenner.
Oh.
So George brought Mel back to the booth. And in 1983, we were in side-by-side booths. I was working with Ken Coleman, and I think Mel might have been working with Bobby Mercer, and we all called Dave Righetti's no-hitter against the Red Sox.
July 4th.
It was about 100 degrees in the Big Apple. Yep.
Wow.
Steinbrenner's birthday, of course.
If you had to name, as someone requests that you do, the most memorable game you've ever broadcast, what comes to mind?
Swinging a ground ball, stabbed by Folk. He has it. He underhands it first.
I've heard that
The
before.
Red Sox are world champions. Can you believe it?
I think I've heard that someplace before.
I turned on my TV for that one.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
I don't know if the audio matched the video. Sometimes we're a little behind or sometimes ahead, but you know, it was one of those calls that you think about forever and all kinds of thoughts go through your mind. And then when it comes to that moment, you can't script it because you don't know how it's going to end. I mean, you try to script it, you could blow it badly. And I had all sorts of historical notes, and I said, let's keep it simple. And I was so glad it was a definitive play, a ground ball to the pitcher. He didn't want it to end in a half swing. Did he swing or didn't he? Or a diving catch? Did he catch it or didn't he? It was, or certainly an umpire's appeal play. So this was the perfect way to end it. A one hopper that Folk grabbed and underhanded to first. And that was the world championship.
How about the best team, Red Sox team you think you've seen?
Well, it's tough to compare eras. I think, you know, the 03 and 04 teams were sensational. The 07 team was really well balanced, wire to wire. And 2018 team won 119 games. You could go position by position and have an argument, but I'd probably have to say 18 because they did win so many games, right, and pretty much led the whole way. But I'd like to see the 18 team play the 07 team. And of course, 04 had Pedro. So that made it special as well, and a lot of veterans. But if it got held in my head right now, I'd say 18.
Yeah.
Because it had speed, it had power, defense, and pitching.
It's just dominant throughout. Right.
Exactly.
Bob Rizzo asked, he said, 2 quick questions. Best Red Sox team to not win the World Series, and the weakest, well, you might not want to comment on this one, the weakest Red Sox World Series winning team.
The best team never to win a World Series was 2008. Terry Francona always thought it was his best Red Sox team that went to the 7th game at Tampa Bay and lost at the Trop. Down 3-1, came back to make it 3-3, and then lost in Game 7. That was a great team. I mean, it had almost everybody from 07, and some had better years. Pedroia was the MVP. The weakest team to win a World Series, I don't know if any team that wins a World Series is weak. Certainly, 13 did not have the big stars, but it fit together so well as a team, and it was Boston strong. Those players really took that to heart, which is most unusual because, you know, when you're in baseball, you live in your own little world, and the outside world is pretty much for it unless it has something to do with sports. But that team did take the Boston Marathon bombings to heart, I think, and it did pull it together. And there was a lot of great camaraderie on that team, and it just fit beautifully. Maybe the 21 team will be like that. Similar type free agents signed, and coming off a bad year, 2012 was, of course, the last place finish. And then 13, they turned around and win it all. That was certainly the most surprising of all the world championships, or all the postseason teams for that matter.
So you're optimistic about this season?
Well, I still like to see the final roster.
Right.
I hope there'll be a few more additions. I mean, Eddie Rodriguez has missed a year, but they say he's working out. He's doing well. Chris Sale maybe mid-season will be back. That certainly will be better than acquiring somebody at the trade deadline, if Chris can be anything close to what he was before he got hurt. I think they will score. I think they'll score. I think JD will bounce back. You'd hope Benintendi would bounce back. Now, it looks like he's going to stay. But the competition is going to be very tough with Toronto now going all out. I mean, Toronto's always had these resources. They're owned by the biggest communications company in North America, Rogers Communications.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're spending. So they're getting very, very good. And of course, the Yankees, I think, strengthen themselves. And Tampa Bay always finds a way, even though they won't have Charlie Morton nor Blake Snell. But they seem to have a knack for knowing when to trade somebody.
Here's an interesting question. You talked about not anticipating perhaps the way a play is going to turn out. Who is the most challenging player to call?
Challenging in terms of...
Or did you learn, like umpires, not to anticipate the call?
Yeah, I think that's what you pretty much have to do. I mean, I've certainly been surprised when, a light hitter would hit a game-winning home run, something along those lines. And we've had individual performances in games or even maybe in seasons that have surprised. But I think that's why you try not to anticipate until, the ball's put in play.
Yeah. About Bill Monbouquet, had a question about just any memories you have of Mambo.
Well, I got to know Mambo well in fantasy camp, and he had a lot of great stories about his days pitching and as a pitching coach. Very close to Mike Timlin. He and Mike worked together when Mike was in the low minors with Toronto and Bill was coaching in their system. And he was a guy that took no prisoners. I mean, he was always talked about being quick with his fists and quick with in any situation. He was a gamer, certainly. I mean, he was a very good pitcher for some very bad teams. Pitched the no-hitter, as did Earl Wilson, of course, with some bad teams with the Red Sox, and then moved on. But it was a lot of fun to be around Mambo in his later years.
He was also a big advocate for Pumpsy Green and Earl Wilson in the early days. He'd grown up in an integrated neighborhood in Medford, and he came to fisticuffs, I believe, with at least one coach who was, using some salty language around Pumpsy in the dugout.
It was not surprising because he was a man of his convictions, and also he's a Jimmy Fund patient, and he loved the Jimmy Fund.
He did some stuff for us at the Jimmy Fund even when he was sick himself. He was really unbelievably courageous guy.
Here's a question about the 2018 season. Did you get hurt when you fell over in your chair after Benintendi's diving final out catch?
Well, I didn't think so, but I did have a little back issue about a month later. Maybe it was a nerve or something, but it was embarrassing when it happened. And, I said to Jan, my wife, after the game, I said, why did Tim have to tell them what happened? She said, it wasn't Tim that said you fell out of the chair, it was you. Because what happened was, it was a tense game. And you recall, if the ball drops, they probably win. Then he comes in, makes a diving catch. Did he catch it or didn't he? And he did. And I stand up, and I was a chair with wheels and rolled backwards. And I went to sit down. The chair had already rolled back, and I went straight down because there was no chair under me. And I rolled over, and the headset sort of got crooked. And that's when I said, I've fallen out of the chair. And it went viral. I was on with Dan Patrick the next day and all over the papers. And I was very embarrassed at the time, but I guess now it's a badge of courage.
That's one of the times we might have wished we'd seen you on TV during the broadcast.
Yeah.
Well, you called it as you saw it.
Yeah, I did. It was
we were all laughing. Good call.
Bregman hit it, and Benny said he knew he had it all the way. And the next day, no one's seen the video. Very few have seen the video, but our engineer shot the video. He just happened to be shooting it because it was going to be the last game or the last play of the game, last out, perhaps. It's been an out, but which it was. And anyway, he had the video, and the next day, I only showed it to certain people, Jackie and Benintendi. They were at their locker, so I showed them, and they got very excited. They laughed at me, of course, but they enjoyed it.
Well, we could put it up on the SABR website if you ever reserve something.
I think I could probably find it, but the audio was bad enough.
Seamus Carney, the veteran chapter chair from the Boston chapter, asked if you could give some background on where you got your signature phrase from. Can you believe it?
I think it was just came to me naturally on a very surprising or unexpected play. The first time I remember using it was at the July afternoon, late afternoon at Fenway Park in 2004. Red Sox playing the Yankees. You remember the pouring rain all morning, and the Yankees thought the game was called off. They were getting dressed to go back to the hotel. Red Sox players pleaded with management to try to play the game. And finally, they did get underway. And that was when A-Rod and got the leather sandwich from Veritek. And then in the bottom of the ninth inning, Bill Miller hit the walk-off home run off Mariano Rivera. And that's when I first remember using Can You Believe It, the 3-run homer in the bullpen that won the game.
Good choice for a game, John Bailey.
By the way, Billy Miller, a great guy, works our fantasy camp. Campers love him. He had 455 in his career against Mariano.
Give a 5-minute warning here. We do have to get off so this Ken Keltner chapter can come on at 8 o'clock. A related question to that call is a favorite call that one of your broadcast partners might have had that you just caught your ear?
I think probably, well, it's hard to pinpoint one, but because of the drama of it, Jerry Trupiano's call on David Ortiz's home run in Game 4 of the ALCS. It went into the bullpen off Paul Quantrill, who was a great friend of ours, of course, in his Red Sox day. That was a great call. Jump on my back, just like Kirby Puckett told the Twins to in '91. That was a very memorable call. And Ken Coleman, so good with the big moments. He had many memorable calls in my time with him, although we didn't have a world championship team. We almost did. That was another tale with Ken. The 7th game of the World Series, we all know what happened. But I called the top of the 10th inning when Henderson homered off the Newsday sign and Barrett knocked in Boggs with the second run. And in the middle of the inning, I said to Ken, well, do you want me to do the bottom of the 10th as I normally did in extra innings? Or do you want me to go to the clubhouse? Be ready for the post-game celebration. And Ken said, strictly up to you. Well, he had been there 20 years. It was my 4th year. And I thought, well, Ken deserves the opportunity to call the last out of the first World Series championship since 1918. And besides, I want to be down there interviewing the players and watching the champagne. I got down to the bowels of Shea Stadium, 2 out, nobody on. Security guard had a radio. I see them bring Mrs. Yawkey into the clubhouse with Lou Gorman to bring the champagne in. Saw the lockers that were covered with a protective cellophane, and then security guard had a radio, and I heard the base hit, and then I heard, gets away, said Bob Murphy as the tying run scored on the wild pitch or pass ball, whatever you want to call it. So I started to run upstairs to the booth, get ready for the 11th inning. I heard the crowd was on a ramp at Shea Stadium because the elevator service was terrible. I decided to run up there, and I never saw the ball through Buckner's legs until Sports Center at 2 o'clock in the morning, because I was on a ramp getting ready to get back to the booth, and Ken had to call that. So that was very tough. I remember he refused to listen to it till he was on his way to a Jimmy Fund Christmas party that December. And he was feeling so good, it said it made him depressed.
There's one question that came in about if you have any thoughts about making the baseball a little deader this year.
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction. We've seen so many balls flying out of ballparks that years ago, especially opposite field homers, you'd never think would carry that far. Of course, in the late 90s, we first thought the ball was juiced. It was the players that were juiced. But I think it's good that they do deaden it a little bit. But that's not going to take away the strikeouts. That's the biggest problem today. Too many strikeouts, too many home runs. Maybe this will help reduce the home runs, but the strikeouts and the time between pitches the pitchers take is just brutal. And that really has to be addressed. And I'm the first to advocate a pitch clock.
Joe, how do you feel about the 10th inning man on second base?
You know, I didn't think I'd like it when it was first proposed, but seeing it in action, it's exciting. I think I'd keep it. Not so much because it makes the game shorter, but because it just adds excitement to it. And I know it sort of messes with stats, but I think it's a good thing. I think 7-inning doubleheaders are good as well, which we're going to have this year.
Tim Verducci thought it'd be interesting to go back to the top of the lineup in the 10th also. So you've got your speedy guy on, second base. Or maybe he leads off and the guy's on second base. Yeah.
But I think it has better rhythm to just pick it up where the lineup would have been.
Yeah.
Next year, as you would if the game were to continue until somebody scores more legitimately. But I can see that argument. It would make it probably even quicker than it was. I think the longest games last year were 13 innings, 2 of them. That was it.
Who was your favorite player as a kid when you were growing up?
My favorite player as a kid, well, my first hero was Jerry Coleman, because the first game I ever went to was Jerry Coleman Day at Yankee Stadium when he came back from Korea. And when he was broadcasting the Padres, I always like to remind him of that. And he was a wonderful guy, of course, a great war hero like Ted in World War II and Korea. Joe McDougal was a favorite. And then, of course, Mickey Mantle. We all wanted to be the Mick, number 7, the switch hitter. And one of my, for my first book, I did the Mickey Mantle pilgrimage. I went, we had an off day in Kansas City. So I drove to first Lamar, Missouri, Harry Truman's birthhouse, another hero, because I've been to his museum many times in Independence, went to his birthhouse. Then I stopped at Baxter Springs, Kansas, where Mickey hit the home run playing for the Whiz Kids. He hit a ball into the river as like a 16-year-old that they never found. And then to Joplin, Missouri, where he played Class C ball, something like 390. And then to Commerce, Oklahoma, his hometown, which had no stores and 3 bars on the main street. And I went to the city hall, and it was election day, and the mayor was reelected, non-paid position. The only paid employee was the city clerk. And I introduced myself to her and says, "You must know my brother-in-law, Steve Crawford, the guy who, of course, was the winning pitcher."
86, another 86.
The winning pitcher in the Clemens versus Gooden game 2. Wow. And, of course, the Dave Henderson game as well. He was a winning pitcher.
We're pretty much at the end of our time here to get off in fairness to the next chapter. Saul, I don't know if you want to have any parting words here. We got up to 85 people at one point. Great response.
Yeah, just like to thank everybody for joining us. And of course, Joe, thank you so much. We'd love to have you back another time, because I feel like we could ask you 20 questions we didn't ask you this time. Maybe when the season gets underway, we can have some reflections on how things are going. But we really are honored to have you. And thank you very much. And everybody be safe, and look for announcements for our next meeting coming up soon.
Well, thank you, Saul. Thank you, Bill. I've been a long-time SABR member. It's a great organization. I look forward to the annual magazine that comes out every year, and we hope to stay in touch. So thanks so much for having me.
We look forward to hearing you on the radio.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Saul.
Bye-bye.